tonight. For those of you joining us live, we're going to get started here in a couple minutes. My name is Matt Gerber, the Executive Director of the Diamond Allegiance. Appreciate you joining us on a Tuesday evening here before Thanksgiving. Excited tonight to have a panel of some of the leaders, some of the top leaders in the youth baseball industry, and get their thoughts on a myriad of things. Really focused tonight on development, competition, recruitment, and testing. Those are the four major things that we're going to talk about tonight. For those of you that are joining as participants to listen to this webinar, if you're here live with us, if you have questions for any of our panelists, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Those will pop in and you'll be able to, I'll do my best as the director of this to try to get the questions to different panelists. So again, there's a Q&A button on the bottom of the screen. You can click that, type in any questions, and we'll do our best to get to them. Due to the volume of our panelists tonight, I'm just going to kind of go through and introduce. And when I say your name, if you could just kind of raise your hand and say hello to the crowd. First of all, we've got CJ Woodrow. CJ is the owner of P2P in Minneapolis. CJ, I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
We've got Jim Osting. Jim is the owner of Ostingers Baseball out of Tampa, Florida. Jim, thanks for being with us tonight.
Matt, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, brother. We got Heath Honeycutt. Heath is the head honcho of ninth inning baseball in the greater Atlanta area.
Appreciate you having us on.
Yep. Next up, we've got Lenny Roberts. Lenny is the owner of the original Florida Pokers, one of the OGs of travel baseball. Really blessed to have Lenny as part of this panel tonight.
Yep, glad to be here with all you guys.
Next up, we've got Brian Blondell. Brian is the owner of Canes Great Lakes. Brian, thanks for being here tonight.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yep. And then we've got Pat Yacinich. Pat, did I pronounce that right, first of all? And second of all, Pat is the one of the owners of Sportsman Solution and the Iowa Sticks. Pat, thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, Matt.
Yep. Next up, we've got Mike Porzio. Mike is the owner of the ClubHouse Connecticut. Was a panelist on our last group, and I'll give you a little shout out, former big leaguer.
Thanks, Matt. Glad to be here.
And then Mike Tumpane. Mike is one of the head honchos of Kings, Illinois. Correct, Mike? Did I say that correct? Yeah. Good. And really excited to have Mike with us here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll jump in and get started. I'm gonna shoot this one over to Brian Blondell. If you can kick us off, Brian. We're going to start on the kind of the testing side of things. And I know that you guys, before we jumped on live, we were just talking about you guys just opened up a new beautiful facility up in your area. What do you guys currently do in your program to test players? And what type of feedback loop do you try to provide to the parents and players?
Yeah, like you said, so previous to this year, testing for us was always a little difficult to do it in kind of an area that gave us enough space to get everybody in a timely manner. But now we've moved into a brand new 220,000 square foot facility. And so basically the way our testing works now is we do baseline testing, which typically starts in end of October, first week of November. We go about 12 to 14 weeks. And that baseline testing will kind of consist of 30-yard dashes, 5-10 fives, usually force plate jumps for explosion. We've got blast motion in there as well, as we have 2-pound med ball throws. Just looking for that side of it. 12 to 14 weeks, and then we retest. And a lot of that is just used, obviously, for us to gear kind of our off-season programming so that we can give baselines to kids and families. And in my opinion, obviously, I think everything's a measurable number now. And for us here with the Great Lakes, it's really to kind of express to parents and players to really have an understanding of what that number is, right? So if I was to ask them what their 30 is, what their 5-10-5 is, what their X, Y, and Z is, they should have an idea of what that number is. And then how are we building towards that through the 12 weeks, the 14 weeks retesting, and then kind of doing that again. So our next test, I believe, is December 15th. We'll test that again, and then we'll do another one right around the middle of February, and then one last one right before our high school guys leave, middle of March. And that's typically what our testing protocol looks like right now. So.
Awesome. And Brian, would you say that in your program, just to dig a little bit deeper, that you guys are more looking for, this to be kind of a personalized, like, not necessarily like, how good am I? How do I stack up? But more about like, what is my number and how do I get my number better? Whether that's an elite number, whether that's I need to make my middle school team or my high school team number. But what you're saying is you guys are focusing more on the individual goals and what their next right step is. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct. Yeah. So what we do is basically kind of tell them based on their age group, what a kind of a rough baseline is. And then they're kind of seeing those numbers, and then we put it into a data system, right, that shows like a leaderboard. So a leaderboard kind of within us based on their age group. So parents can kind of see that, and then they'll see up and down arrows based on each test. So individually, they're seeing kind of what an normal average is nationwide, or kind of what we populate. And then, they're working individually. So they're following kind of a development program throughout those 14 weeks or so to kind of get themselves better individually. What we always say is that we know it's a team game, but we're working individually to obviously better ourselves. It's not cookie cutter, right? So we're really trying to format that to make sure those kids can do that if they have a gym, if they don't have a gym, if they have a parent that can help them, or if they don't have a parent that can help them, but they kind of know what their metrics or what they're shooting for.
Great. Awesome, Brian. CJ, I'm going to ask you the same question. I know, things are different geographically across the country with how people are testing, when they're testing, how they're providing that feedback loop. Brian, obviously in the Great Lakes area, CJ, you up in Minneapolis. What does the protocol look like for the P2P group?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of like what Brian said, the pitch to pitch, we do a lot of the pre, post, and mid-range testing. So you get assessed, excuse me, you get assessed at the beginning of the program. We have an 18-week program that we do from November to March. Similar to Brian, we test everybody, get their lane started for what type of player they are, depending on their age level, their ability level, what their goals are. We write that down, we provide them that baseline. And then every month or every phase of the program, we basically retest, reshuffle it. So like our hitters, they have to work on different things on front side, back side, oppo, reading pitches, and then their program is designed and changed for their needs. Same thing with our throwers, if they got to change their arm mapping or how they're going to do their workload, and the same thing in the weight room. So all of it is iterative, but we go through different phases throughout the winter so that where they start to where they end, there's a progression and a plan in place so that not everyone's doing the same things, but they're all working towards the same goal for their needs. And we do similar things, leaderboards, metrics, trying to show them where they should be at their age level compared to the art program, to the region, to the nation, so they understand that there is a progress and there is a process to getting to different levels versus just, am I the best at my age in my area? It's, well, how does that compare to everybody else? What do I have to do? There's always something to work on. And so we try to make sure they're aware of that. Hey, it's not linear. Development's not linear. You're going to have some setbacks. You're going to have some gains, some losses. But the thing is what are you working towards? What's your goal versus just doing reps? So we always try to have them focused on what they are there for versus just doing work.
Awesome. Rob Wooten, welcome. Glad to see you could jump in. I'm going to introduce Rob, owner of C35, Pinehurst, North Carolina, former Tar Heel and former Major League Baseball player. Rob, thanks for being on tonight. I'm going to point a question right at you here. The CAP, your guys' outdoor facility, is going to be the second home of a Kerr Test Center and is currently being built. So as we talk about testing, is there one or two metric or tests that for you that are really, really important? I know that you coached obviously at the professional level. Is in your history, I guess what I'm asking is there one or two tests, maybe one or two for a hitter, one or two for a pitcher that you really like to look at and you value when it comes to what it could turn into or what that player could be someday?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is an honor to be able to call with all these people that are much smarter than me. I couldn't even figure out how to get on. So it's nice to be on. So, I mean, yeah, I'll speak from the pitching side. Velocity is always going to be a metric that everyone is going to look at. That's what the outside looks at. That's what coaches look at. However, there's a much bigger picture inside of that, you know, and what makes effective velocity. You know, you've got guys that throw, you know, when I was playing, it was so hard to understand why guys that were throwing 100 miles per hour were getting absolutely blasted. And then guys that were throwing 88, 90 that were blowing fastballs up in the zone. We had no idea why. Now we've got this quantitative data that shows why, with the spin rate, the efficiency, the vertical break, all of that. So that all those numbers come into a picture that really identify what the pitcher should be, right? So, and it gives us a better understanding of where should we go with this, the profile of his fastball, what should we do with that as far as the secondary pitches, you know, so, and find those strengths, and they build off of each other, you know. On the hitting side, I mean, yeah, you look same thing, you know, exit velocity is something that you can progress over time. You know, launch angle, I'm not very educated in that, so I don't want to speak too much on that. You know, as a pitcher, I can tell you how to get you out. I can't tell you how to hit, you know, so, but, you know, we're excited to get the second curve test center. I know that there's such a sophisticated test, a consistent test that our players are going to be able to measure themselves up, not only with their peers, but their track on their direction and their goals to get to the next level, right? So, you know, there's so much out there. There's so much data. Everybody on this call values different things. You know, you put 31 pitching coaches in a room, they're all gonna have different philosophies, you know, so velocity is important, but if that velocity is not used effectively, then, you know, you're kind of missing the boat.
Great. Heath, Honeycutt, I'm going to transition to you here. One of the, I think, really cool things about the Curve Test Center is the access to the Proteus machine, and being able to really test how an athlete, you know, can move rotationally, which is so important. You know, what their strength is, what their profile looks like. I know that we were talking earlier, and you guys actually have a Proteus machine at your facility and use it. One of the, you know, most cutting edge technological things in the industry right now. So if you could talk a little bit about that and what you've seen and how you've seen that piece of machinery really help your players.
Yeah, I think with the Proteus machine, it's an athletic move, right? Everything that they do is based on athletics, not just baseball, right? Yeah, I mean, you see golfers, football players, et cetera, going on there. But what they come down with is kind of the metrics to what increases swing speed, what increases velocity, so on and so forth. So they got basically a 10-point test that we're using to figure out where your power outputs are and where your deficiencies are, and so on and so forth. And then from that, we just take it and we build a product for each individual player to attack those deficiencies, right? Because not everybody's deficient in the same thing. And it may be why they're blocked to, hey, I can only PR at, 88 miles an hour. Well, it's because maybe your rotation isn't there, or maybe you have something going on with your back, or whatever it is. But those things are done through, hundreds of thousands of data points and a lot of different people across the country. So we've had a ton of success with it. We've started implementing it into everything that we're doing on our training side. It's probably one of the best pieces of equipment that I think I've ever seen in the sport, just because it's multi-sport. It's not just baseball oriented. So it's an athletic move, which I think everybody probably on this panel can say, hey, if you play multiple sports and you can move in multiple different ways, you're going to be a better baseball player. So it's a really unique and amazing product. And I'm excited for the curve stuff, because a lot of it is based on that Proteus machine and what it can do and help you.
Awesome, Heath. Mike Tumpane, question for you. You came up to our summit in Atlanta. We're able to see the Curve Test Center in Atlanta and obviously be part of a broader discussion with a lot of guys that are on this panel tonight. What would you say kind of excites you about the Curve Test and being able to give your players access here in 2025 to being able to be a part of that?
I think it takes the testing to a whole new level. I think adding the proctors and having a very streamlined approach, and you're looking at more than kids and families see when they go to a showcase, somewhere. I think we've all seen the video of somebody doing a showcase at a program I won't name, running their 60 time through like 3 or 4 door jams. Being able to have a really professional, well-built facility that flows and has professional proctors and really is capturing metrics, beyond just the typical bats or exit velo, pitching velo, using the Proteus, using the I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but the test of the cognition and recognition and those types of things. I think really just takes it to another level, and I think it's going to help these kids understand how to be more than just that cage monster or that bullpen monster, and be really able to understand what it takes to be good at baseball and compete at the highest levels.
Yeah, great. And we're going to transition, guys, to development, and we're gonna kind of go in order, but I'm gonna ask the same question to Mike, Porzio, Pat, Lenny, and Jim. We'll go in that order again. I'll kind of call out your name, but the word development gets thrown around a lot, right, in this space. Player development organization, just development in general. So I'd like to hear in your words, Mike Porzio, to start. What does development mean to you? When you hear the word development, what does that mean to you?
Well, I would say it's mastery of the topic. So, what we have are players in a journey to excellence. Hopefully, that's how you get to the things you want to higher baseball. So along the way, you're just trying to really understand patterns, understand yourself, understand, like has been said on the call, just physical limitations, deficiencies, and you're just organizing. Basically, you're just trying to organize all that and then deliver success. And and it has to be done again and again. And so it takes repetitions, it takes learning. But there's probably a few people on the call here who could play the piano, or I can't. But it's all, every skill is derived by learning and then reps. And so all these organizations are talking about purposeful training, which is why these are top organizations on the call. They're not doing mindless repetition. So the repetitions alone don't make you a better player. And, I heard an expression years ago about, a fly trying to get out of a car. Like, it's going to try all day long, but it's still going to die in the car because it doesn't know how to roll the window down, right? So we need to be the people who are not just trying stupidly, but the ones who are trying purposefully. And so I think everyone in this game that's done well is figure out how to be more creative and curious, which is why I think the data brings in a whole new exciting element to things, because it lets you be curious about why is that data say what it says. And so when you change how you move, and when you change, some of your strength things, like you change the data. And so what it is learning how to move efficiently and understand those things, so that as mastery of a skill, you're doing it easily and you're doing it efficiently. And so you have the opportunity to do that skill for many years. And so forced production is required, but the good ones make it look easy. And so it's limiting that window of force into the right time and in the right way and in the right space and in the right direction. And as those things happen, you start looking like an expert. And it could be any topic, but even if you're tying your shoes, if you're, when you're 3 years old, it takes a lot of concentration. At this point, you don't even look at your shoe to tie the shoe because you've done it enough times. So same in baseball. It's all solvable. So I would encourage the kids that are really trying to do great at this game, believe that you can do it, be curious on how to do it better, then just get after it. And whether it's, I use the expression here like bacon and cake. I don't care. Like, you don't normally become master chef after one cake, but if you bake enough of them, you'll figure it out. And so how do you get a barrel? Well, that's easy. How do you get a barrel against 90? That's harder. We'll keep doing it. You figure out how do you get a barrel against 6'6" righty throwing 100 miles an hour downhill? Okay, I got to figure that one out. Pretty soon you've kind of figured out enough of the equations that you can go in a game and have a little fun, because you can compete with some know-how. And I think all it is about the know-how. And that's why we love the players that have the get it, because it means they've put the time in a great way. They've listened to the data, they've listened to the coaches, they've listened to their bodies, and they found some kind of balance to work within all those data points to say, this is me. And that's really what it is finding out who you are and just always be driving for more, because the game is always going to want more. And we ask for a better version of the players. The colleges want a better version of the players. And so you should be in it. That's life. Be a better version of who you are, and you're absolutely on the track to great success.
Whoever's got to follow that one up, Pat, I apologize, but it might be the best definition of development that I've heard. So
Yeah, no, that was great, Mike.
look, Todd, for you guys, what does development mean for you guys?
Yeah, and Mike, his last statement was, be the best version of yourself. We pride ourselves on development, so development's a big part of what we do, and it's really a big part of why we're a part of Diamond Allegiance, right? I come in my former professional life as a teacher and a coach and an educator, and you had to do a test, and you had to prepare for the test, and the only indication of improvement was through that test. So what really caught our eye when we became members of the Diamond Allegiance was the testing. And, I think this answer relates to a lot of things that some people said before. CJ talked about individualizing. He talked about being a better athlete. For us, development is about being athletic. And obviously we encourage multi-sport athletes. You can talk to any Division I coach and they look at athletic development. Does he move athletically on the mound? Does he move athletically in center field? What we've done, maybe to go back a little bit to your first question, we've been testing kids from 7 years old all the way up to 18 for, the better part of more than a decade. And we use those numbers and we share them with our parents. And the example that we give is when you talk to a parent, who are all of our clients, about their child from the time they were 6 weeks old, his head size is in the 50th percentile. Is my kid normal? Is my kid ahead? So they understand all of those basic numbers. And what we've tried to do is really individualize those numbers through our series of testing. And so when we talk about development, we try to show you started here and you started there. Almost all of our training is about being athletic and doing tried and true standard, strength, speed, and agility training. And, we've sort of stayed that course over the time. So the word development to us means becoming a better athlete. And we do that through strength. We do that through skill. We do that, we know that a better athlete can throw harder. We know that somebody who's a better athlete can hit harder. We believe, in the old school stands for scouts say, if he can run and throw, we can teach him the rest. We sort of are the same thing. So development is that for us. It's all about becoming a better athlete. And then we create all of our classes around strength and skill. We monitor it, we keep track of it, and we show the results to the families, to the paying customers who come to us. Now that we're transitioning into the curve, we've kind of put our other stuff on delay, and we're really waiting for this to come to fruition because it's so dang close. So we're so excited about the curve test so that we can really show development over time and show parents how their kid stacks up. I'm sure all these guys on the call have heard the old, our team always gets beat. We're not getting any better. Well, that argument doesn't fly in our organization because we show your child and how they are getting better, and your son and how he is getting it and how he stacks up and the things he can do to increase those things. So that's in a nutshell kind of how we develop all of our stuff. It is about athleticism.
Great. Lenny, same question to you. And for those that are listening and even the guys on the panel, Lenny's got a really cool perspective because he's done this with his own kids. He's got kids that are playing, professional golf, professional baseball. And so, a unique perspective on development. I think that Lenny, that you can bring to the table, not to put you on the spot here, but, from a organization standpoint, but also from a parent and a dad standpoint, what does development mean to you and what did it look like for you?
Yeah, those are two pretty good answers. I got to follow there. And I'm kind of jealous of all you guys with all your facilities and your development, and you got these kids year round, or at least most of the year. I mean, we're in the Wild West down here in South Florida. And Matt, you know what goes on down here. To get a kid to stay for a second season, you're doing good down here. So, but to us, I mean, development, number one, comes about developing the individual, because the game of baseball is going to end one day. And the most pride we get is a kid that goes off and starts a family and comes back to you with his own kid. And now we have 7 former players in the program coaching their own kids. Later on, they're successful humans raising a family. So number one, we teach these kids from when they're young. My dad, we're Ohio State football fans, and my dad stole this from Jim Tressel, and it was the attitude of gratitude, instilling in our kids. And we send every one of our kids 13 and younger after the game is over to go to the fence to talk to the parents. And it usually starts out with one sentence, but we want them to thank the parents, thank whoever's there for bringing them. Like, start teaching them about there's bigger things than them. There's someone always doing stuff for them. So we start about that. By the time you get to the end of the season, they're talking for 2-3 minutes, these kids. So we're talking about public speaking. We're developing the individual. But when it comes to the baseball part and the athletic part, I mean, it depends on what age you're at. I mean, we had tryouts for our youth division, which we just took over a youth division that has 8 to 13 years with 175 kids, but we had 350 kids come to try it. So unfortunately, 75% of them couldn't catch and throw. So we went back and we just started a clinic called it's our development series, where we're taking 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds who couldn't catch and throw and teaching them how to catch and teaching them how to throw properly, so we can build skills that they can go play a position, that they're going to be at first base or at second base and be in a meaningful spot instead of right field. So they're going to keep interest in the game. As you get to the older kids, we don't have our full-time year coaches here. So in South Florida, we've got guys we go to, Sean Riggins, who's our catching guy. We go to Felipe Suarez, who's our pitching guy, guys that have sent guys to big time levels, to the pros, to D1 schools all over the place, that we know. We go to this guy, go, look, here's where he's at. We sit with the kid, tell him where he's at. Here's where we need to get him to. And it's kind of a collaboration with the guys that we trust, that are our circle of coaches, that we're going to entrust with our kids, and then working to get the feedback we need. If it's raising velocity or his off speed's not where it needs to be, he needs to develop a changeup. And then we just started with bringing in a training company. Yeah, you guys are all doing all that stuff. That's what we're excited about. We haven't done all the testing that you guys have done, so we're just getting into it. But that's the part that needs to happen, because the days of just going to tell a kid he's not quick enough, that's great. To be able to show him on a piece of paper, go, here's where you need, if this is where you're trying to go and here's where you're at, we have room to get you there. And so to me, development starts about the person, and then getting them to buy into who you are and creating a culture to be able to give them the honest feedback that they're going to trust you and not run away from you when it's not what they want to hear. To be that basically you're showing them how they want to get to where they want to get to in life, and you're just part of that journey with them.
Yeah, love it, Lenny. Jim, I'll let you finish off with this question. What does development mean to you, and how do you do it in your program?
I'm not sure how you hit cleanup after the first 3 hitters hit home runs, but I'll give my shot. For us with Ostingers, our program is 8 to 18, and I think the development question is always raised, and it's like, who are you and how do we get you better? For us, I definitely think, and a few of the guys Lenny hit on just now, I think it starts with culture. For us, it's a culture of being about a team, and being about a process from the young ages of moving forward, respecting the game, and all those things are a huge part of, for me, development as a baseball player. 100% agree with everything that we talk about, the Proteus machines and the testing, which are outstanding. But I also feel like there's got to be that mind part of baseball, which I'm super excited about with some of the curve stuff that we have coming out, with the curve testing of the mind and body. A big part of that development for us is teaching kids how to move correctly. I think movements and water bags are really big and important to kind of teach kids the right movements of how to do things. But I think the biggest part for us, what's kind of helped us be very successful, is we don't stop competing. And what I mean by that is, if we have a practice, we'll have 8-year-olds and we're competing to see how many balls they pick up in the cage. I know that some, might seem kind of elementary or silly, but, it's that compete factor that I think a lot of kids in the, in the showcase realm of baseball, they miss out on that compete thing. So we're fortunate enough to have most of our players in a very close radius. So when we do have practices at the younger ages and even at the high school summer teams, we compete. We take batting practice, but it's not rounds of 5 to see how far we can hit it. It's, hey, we're going to take BP and we're going to go, a base hit round, or we're going to go a hit and run round, or we're going to, that compete factor that I think we miss a lot. And that bounce back factor of, kids coming back from college and going, hey, I wasn't good enough to be there, because they didn't know how to compete physically on paper. They definitely were there, but they didn't, we missed that part. So some of this testing that's coming out with Curve, I'm really excited to kind of see how that stuff is going to fit and mold into what we do. And I think all of us kind of being baseball guys are probably as excited about the physical part of it as we are the mental side. So I know we're kind of going to lead into the recruiting and competing kind of next, but I think that that's something that's really been beneficial for our program, is figure out and learn how to compete and develop that way as well.
Yeah, I love it, Jim. And just to kind of encapsulate the top 4 hitters there, you guys all killed it. What I heard is you got to develop the person, you got to develop the athlete, you got to develop the mind, and you got to develop the competitor, right? And you put those 4 things in a, together, and you jumble them up. And if you can do that, you're going to create a successful athlete in person on the back end. And I don't want to just glaze over, right? We talk a lot in this industry, and parents and players, as they should be, are focused on the numbers, right? The measurables, the things, how fast do I throw? How fast do I run? They're important, right? But, the person and the competitor are also probably even more important, right? Because for most of us, I mean, we're lucky enough, I think if I count right, we got 3 former big leaguers on this call here with us today. And I think probably another, 6 or 7 that played pro ball. That percentage is so small compared to, the kids that are coming through your programs and coming through the Diamond Allegiance programs. So the development of the person and the development of the competitor then creates somebody that's going to be successful in life. And I think at the end of the day, we would all probably raise our hand and say we're probably the most proud of those kids. Not that we're not proud of the kids that may have made it to the big leagues that played for us, but those are the type of people that we want to create through our program. So really enjoyed that conversation. It's a good parlay here into our next discussion, which is competition. And competition can take its form, in many, many different ways. I'm going to go back to the top here and go back to Brian. Brian, what do you believe is the correct balance between competition and development?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have the right answer to this. I mean, I think we're always trying to, at least for our group, we're always just trying to look at it, year by year. I would say we're trying to basically make sure that when our kids walk out of whatever they're doing, if it's baseball oriented, if it's physical, if it's, speed and agility, we're putting and figuring out if we're getting better, right? I mean, I think the old adage out there is, 1% better when we leave, right? So we use that a lot. But I think to Jim's point, talking about picking up balls in the cage, I don't know if we've gotten that granular, but I would say at every workout we're doing, we've got some form of 20 to 30 minutes somewhere built in for competition. And it could be defensive oriented, right? Where we're going to go through all of our fielding techniques. And at the end, we're going to have kind of 2 cones, and it's, man versus man. And, we're going to try to, just compete against each other. And we're just going to try to teach the kids how to get after it in the cage. We're going to do that with, it could be blast, it could be our hit tracks. Where we're finishing off with, sometimes we do home run stuff, sometimes it's line drives, sometimes it's backside, working on just different ways to who gets more hits, who does different things at different times. So I think for us, it's right. It's just trying to build, some form of level of understanding when they walk in that, if they're here for 90 minutes, if they're here for 2 hours, whatever that case may be, that we've got some form of competition going, so that when they get on the field, right, they understand what that is. And that goes for not only baseball, but it can go for any sport. And I think that's important for at least us, what we're trying to at least gauge on our end. And again, we'll evaluate that at the end of the year, and we may tweak it slightly. And, we may keep it the same, but we're always just trying to look at what's best. And, I'm not afraid to kind of take advice from other people on what works for them, especially teams that are, consistently, maybe better or competing at higher levels. We're always trying to find ways to get those kids a little bit more of an advantage to understand what it means when they step on the field to compete, till the last out. So.
Yeah, let me follow up one more question to you, Brian. You talked about getting on the field. What's the right recipe, right? I think that, obviously not with any of the programs that are on this call, right? We've got a good balance between development and playing the game. But in your mind, do you think that, do you think it's a narrative, or do you think there really is an issue with kids either doing one or the other too much and not having a good blend of each other, i.e. playing too many games, not spending enough time refining their skill set? Or I think we've even seen the pendulum swing to the other side of things, where kids are spending too much time in the cage and in the bullpen and not spending enough time on the field. So what's the right balance for you, and how do you guys help keep that?
Yeah, I think honestly, that's a conversation, we've probably over the last, I would say probably at least 3 to 4 years, really started trying to have with parents, right? We're definitely fortunate that, we have 24/7 access for a lot of our kids, right? And so a lot of our kids are trying to figure out, like, do I sit in the cage all the time, or do I go play another sport? And I think, the downside with some of the showcases that are out there and the rankings that are out there, right? It puts, that pressure on kids that, do I give up playing basketball? Do I give up playing football, hockey, whatever that other sport is? I think ultimately at the end of the day for us, right, it's, whatever you're doing, and we don't force kids to be in here all the time. We open up our facility to have them come in if they have time. We want them to be in here, but I think going back to the first topic of, testing, really for us, it's, putting those numbers so that they understand what those numbers are, and saying, hey, listen, I mean, at the end of the day, if your exit velocity is this, or your speed, you can throw this hard, how do we continue to get better, still being able to be an athlete, go out and play other sports, do those types of things, and but have the focus so that when the game comes around, you're in a position where you feel like you can compete, and you're not putting yourself at risk because you haven't done enough. But again, I think we just had it recently here where the 2025 rankings just came out, right? And I mean, immediately my phone starts blowing up about how did this kid get outranked over me and different things of that nature. And again, sometimes it doesn't make any sense, right? Because I don't know if there is a true measurable to that, other than the kid maybe performed 4 different times in a showcase and you only performed once. So I think the balance is really, really difficult. But we're just trying to educate as much as we can on what's good for the kid and what's going to give them an opportunity to play at the next level. And I think if we do that, we're doing our part. And we're always just trying to educate as best we can to the parents, because most of the time they're just looking for advice, and we're just trying to provide as much as we know, to try to give them and lead them in the right direction.
Great. Rob Wooten, I'm gonna fire the same question to you. I'll rephrase it in a little bit different way, but what are some of, I guess, the extremes that you're seeing in today's landscape on both the the competition or the playing side of things and the development side, and how do you try to marry the two and provide the right roadmap for your players and for your parents?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think Brian did a great job explaining competition and development. My opinion is competition is development. So baseball is a little bit unique in a sense from other sports, where if you take your college level and your pro level, you're playing more than you're practicing. In season, right? So in travel baseball, we're playing as many games, but the way they are designed is extreme, right? So when you're taking a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14, 16, doesn't matter, and you're playing a Saturday, Sunday, or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it takes 7 to 8 games to win a plastic trophy, to me, there's nothing that benefits the kid. It benefits the tournament organizer, right? It benefits the helicopter parents because their kids won a gold bracket championship, right? But in no other sport, or no other level of baseball, whether it's high school, college, professional, in those particular instances, you're not allowed to play back-to-back doubleheaders, right? But you're telling 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds, we can play doubleheaders on Saturday, We can play 4 games on Sunday. It's fine. It's no problem, right? And we wonder why down the road we're having so many injuries, So, and on the flip side of that, on the development side, right? So, velocity training, it's a wonderful tool, right? If it's done right. And what I mean by that is a lot of these facilities around the country are showing content of guys reaching their PR on a pull down, a bullpen, whatever, right? The question is, how do they get there? And how do they sustain it? Okay, because if I'm throwing 95 on a pull down, okay, that's great. But if that 95 translates to 86 on the mound and then 84 and then 82, what does it matter? Right? So the training and the development has to be sustainable, and then that has to translate into the games. But the game model is hurting the development model, because now we're having our kids to be able to train to play 6-7 games to win a tournament. There's many instances where, including my kid, I got a 10-year-old playing right now in our organization, and there's times where I'm like, okay, just lose the game, because I mean, this is ridiculous. Like this, to play at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and now we got to play a game at 5 o'clock and win. So you got kids out there that are throwing or catching, playing short, pitching, doing all this stuff, and they're absolutely worn out, but they don't know any better. So to me, the extreme is that. Look, everything about the competition is great, but how do we structure it in a way where it's beneficial and it lines up to the high school, the college, and the professional level?
Well, I think we've got some answers to that.
100%. Yes.
Let me pose the same question, CJ. What do you see in terms of kind of the extremes of, maybe we phrase this one a little bit different. Like, what's the difference in your mind between, the cage monster that's, can drop bombs in the cage and can't play in the game or struggles in the game, and then vice versa, the guy that's just out there chasing the trophies and the rings and the showcases, right? And in your mind, what's the right balance between those two?
Yeah, I think we've all seen pretty much the gambit on everything. The examples that come to mind is I've had guys that have hit 120 miles an hour exit velo off a tee, but it was right in the ground and you can't hit a ball in a game. We've had 9-year-olds tell me that when I say, hey, want to go take some reps at third base, he looks at me and says, I play first. We've seen kids that they get called up to play varsity, and he says, what, can you play right field? He says, no, I'm a second baseman. And we hear these stories and we're just like, guys, we're not understanding what competition is and what development is, because we talk about the why. Like, do you understand why you need to learn all the positions, why you need to understand your lead, why the little things matter, how it ties, so that you know how to compete. We use the kind of the craft model, measure 6, cut once. So when you're ready to compete, you got to be ready to compete, because if the lights are too bright because you're not ready, you haven't worked in the dark yet, you're not ready for the light. And so you got to make sure you've done the work, but you understand why you're doing the work, versus just doing anything you saw on YouTube or some video and just doing workouts. If you don't have a reason why you're doing things, you don't know how it relates, so then you can't handle the pressure. At the end of the day, at every level, it's all about, can you handle the pressure and slow the game down? Because if you can, then you can execute at a high level, the game gets really fun. But the chasing the trophy stuff, we always try to vet that out right away, that if you don't understand that it's about the work, trusting your teammates and doing all the things together, individual performance, but in a team unit, I can go buy a trophy. But the point is, the trophy for us is making varsity. It's getting to college. It's having opportunities at the next level. We define success differently than just, did you win? Because we've all been in it where you could go 3-0 in your pool and you're having a great weekend, but you run into a buzzsaw in the semis and you lose and you didn't win a trophy, and the team thinks that it was a failure. And you're like, dude, we went 3-1. We got better. We threw better strikes. We ran bases better. We fielded better. We were better teammates. We did all the things right to get better at whatever stage that we're at whatever age level. But it's about, how do we define success, and what is the culture, and what is the process, and what are you doing it for? Because the extremes we see were these groups that only want to win. They only care about the trophy, the piece of plastic, like Rob was saying. We don't know how to win. Take your 3-4 pitchers, burn them out, teach them curveballs at a young age, have one guy at short, and everyone has their role. That's all they ever play. But when they get to high school, right, and the coach says, I want your bat, can you play this position? We tell our guys, you better be able to say yes, because they want you to be an athlete. You want to be able to understand the game of baseball. And then college, the first question all of our colleges ask us, like they probably ask you, is not what his metrics are. They know what those are. They can see that. They want to know his character. They want to know, how does he compete? How does he earn? How does he handle pressure? Does he start early? Does he stay late? Is he a good teammate? How does he treat his parents? Does he go to class? Like those different pieces when it comes to competition and the extremes is, are we understanding what it means at every level to get to the next level versus did you win? So for us, it's about the extremes of trying. That's why I love the Diamond Allegiance and the testing center for the whole rounded athlete. Is it's about process. It's not always result, because if you do it right, you do the process right, results follow. And that's why you do the work. Even if you throw a perfect game, you got to go back out and do it again, and you're not gonna. So you got to get back to work. It's cliche, but it's not how many times you get knocked down. It's if you get back up again, right? And so to us, the extreme of just having a kid play second base forever, even though his dad's 6'4" and he's going to grow, but you never taught him third, you never taught him center. You never gave him opportunities to learn other positions because you just wanted to win, and he gets pigeonholed into this position forever. You're not helping the kid. You might get him out of baseball. Sure. And so for us, it's not about the extreme of wins and losses. To us, it's about how do you define success for the player, for the team, for the culture. And if you do it the right way, good things are going to happen. But the extremes that we've seen, and you guys have all seen, is win at all costs. I mean, last thing I'll say is we just saw a kid down in Florida for one of the World Series tournaments coming off TJ, and he threw 105 pitches. Coach kept him in. And I'm sitting next to LSU and Florida State and all these other college coaches just shaking their heads saying, what is going on? And the colleges can see that. Varsity coaches, we all can see it, but they got to win. They got to look good. And so for us, it's about what's your definition of success for the player, the class of player, and the program and the culture. If it's not just now, but like Lenny was saying, everyone, it's about life. But if you do it right, good things follow. But you got to know how to do the work, and you got to explain the why. That's what we're here for. Is they can look up drills all day long and play games all day long, but do they understand why they're doing it and how they get better and what they have to adjust? It's all about adjustments. If you don't know how to adjust or why you need to adjust, you're not going to get better. So you're just going to have the definition of insanity, and you keep doing the same thing and wonder why you're not getting better, why you're not winning. And that to me is the extremes need to have the balance of, are you ready for the stage? And then do you know what to do when you're on the stage? And then once you make a couple mistakes, do it again, and then fix it and do it again. But you got to have the process in place to understand how to compete versus all you do is play games. Because we see that a lot where all they do is play and they never practice. And that does not help it doesn't help the player.
Yeah, love it. Mike Tumpane, I'm going to kind of transition here and talk a little bit more about, the competition and what we're going to be doing through the Diamond Sports Foundation for events going into this summer. So you were part of the meetings in Atlanta, and, we're in the trenches kind of discussing what this would look like. What most gets you excited about the Diamond Sports Foundation and the Diamond Allegiance events going into this summer?
Yeah, I just think the structured approach that you're going to bring to it with, really partnerships with the colleges, the recruiters, and the scouts. So many of these tournaments that we go to can be crapshoots, especially in the Midwest. We take our teams, our top teams out to some of these big tournaments in the Southeast, in the Southwest. But it's tough. You get a really mixed bag of competition. One of the big ones we go to in the Midwest is in Iowa, and, we'll run into some really good teams, and then we'll win some other games 28-0. And that's not fun for anybody. That's not fun for the kids on the winning team. It's not fun for kids on the losing team. Certainly not fun for the parents. I think creating some structure around who plays who, as all the Diamond Allegiance members commit to sending, the teams that belong in certain brackets, and really, again, just a cohesive effort around the recruiting piece or the scouting piece. I know we've talked about having some communication opportunities with parents and college coaches, kind of back to what everybody just talked about in the last one. I think so much of it's education for our parents. They don't know what they don't know. And what they do know is they see this team going out and playing 125 games in a summer at 13U and broadcasting it on Twitter and using that as a recruiting tool, or, the metrics that people are sharing, from their profiles and their testing or their rankings, helping parents understand what that means and what it is, and in some cases what it isn't. I think.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Yeah.
What does it mean and what doesn't it mean?
I think everybody kind of talked about the competition. Can they hit a ball 120 miles an hour off the tee to the ground, or can they, hit that ball to the right side with a runner on second when you're down? Can they, make the adjustments in game? Can they compete beyond, how hard they throw or how hard they hit? We've all heard the saying, nobody cares how hard you throw a ball for. But everybody's out there chasing velocity. Can they pitch? Can they command a zone? Can they hit their spots? Can they mix it up if somebody's catching up to them or figuring it out? Working on all of those different things, I think, are really the things that count and the things that matter, and they don't show up in a showcase necessarily. And helping parents understand the difference between those, and they're good experience, and it helps build some character. It's you're under some pressure, you're in the spotlight, but is it the end all be all to what these kids are trying to accomplish? Absolutely not. There's a lot more to it, and helping them understand that, I think, is a big part of what we have an obligation as programs to do with our families.
Awesome. Heath, Honeycutt, same kind of question here to you. Is there anything in the planning phases that we've gone through with the Diamond Sports Foundation events this summer? Is there anything in particular that kind of jumps out that kind of gets you excited about being a participant in them?
I've been a participant in listening to everybody talk here tonight. And, there's a few things I kind of want to go back on just to kind of tie this maybe in a bow. And I can't remember who said it, so please, let me know. But since birth, everybody knows what percentile you're in, right? I mean, that's kind of the barometer for parents. The problem is there's no algorithm by anybody out there that says this is where you fall, right? I'll go back to the Proteus thing that I was talking about earlier. They have data points now that can tell you between, 5 miles an hour exit velocity and 5 miles an hour velo, where you're going to be, right? And so to me, having those type of data points will help, I think, parents understand where they're at. If you say, hey, I'm a perfect game 9, I've had plenty of perfect game 9s that should have been a 4, right? So the reality is it's a subjective number, and parents are relying on this subjective number to determine where they want to go, whether it's, rankings of teams and, whether it's ninth inning or Ostingers or Canes or whoever. They're going, oh, well, ninth inning is, 35 and Ostingers is 2. So I want to go play for Ostingers, but it might be Ostingers' 4th team that maybe it's not as competitive as ninth inning 1 team. So I think ultimately overall is maybe what we were talking about, Mike, I think is the parents' education, educating the parents on exactly what's going on in the competition out there. If I had my druthers, I would rather play less and train more. But you have to play, right? I mean, you have to play. The game is about playing. But if I look at the college level, you're playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You might have a 2 game in the middle somewhere, but you're not playing those 7 games in 3 days. That is incredible for 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, not let alone 18-year-olds. So I think there's something in that on the competition where we as a Diamond Allegiance now with, having the ability to get together and play quality games, not games that you're winning 23-0. Again, that doesn't do anything for anybody. The fear of missing out to me is probably a big piece too for parents, because they see, whatever national team playing 100 games in a summer. Oh, my son has to play there because they've had 32 Division I players, and this is where we need to be. Well, it might not be where your son needs to be, because at the end of the day, maybe your son isn't that, Power 5 guy that hits bombs out of the arc. He could be a Division II, D3, JUCO, who knows where he is, but he's in his journey, right? And I think somebody said journey on a path or wherever we're going. And I think it's individualized. And I truly believe the development piece for travel organizations should be at the forefront. And that's why I'm so excited about the curve side, getting some tournaments that aren't, you have to play every week, every day, all the time, because by the time the end of the summer comes, and y'all can probably attest to this too, the last 2-3 weeks in July my dudes are dead. They're like dead. And velos go down, everything goes down. And not because we're throwing them 108 pitches, it's because they played 4 months before that in high school where they're throwing 108 pitches. And so by the end of that time period, they're exhausted. And so it doesn't do anything for them except set people backwards, I believe. So there's got to be that dynamic where the competition we need to dial it back a little bit on the tournaments and not chase those rings all the time, because it's not really what it's about. It's about the quality of the at-bat, the quality of the outing that you're out there, and the quality of the defensive work that you're out there. So that's just my 2 cents on kind of, and I do have to add this because I love listening to Porzio talk. He's freaking amazing. But the quality of reps, right? It's so important. That's all this is. You could go out and play every day, all day, but if you're playing against bad competition, that quality rep is nothing. It's a zero. So anyway, I just had to give Mike a little shout because I love that.
Well, I think Porzio is pretty good too. So we're gonna Mike. We'll put you on the spot here and just follow up with it. I'm gonna ask you the same question. You know, when it comes to the Diamond Sports Foundation, the Diamond Legions coming together to run some events this summer and going into the fall, what most excites you about it, and why should your parents look forward to it?
I'm excited for the whole experience piece of it because, we've all played this game and stayed around it because we've enjoyed our experience in the game. And, I was talking about the brutal weekend that, I think a few people probably on this call, we've been in tournaments that have ended at midnight or later, it's not really how you see your weekend unfolding, coming home at 3 a.m, because you're trying to finish out a game. And so the whole thing with the tournament venue done right is what I'm excited, because it can be done right. It's just being smart about it, getting the right people together, talking about how it can be better, and then just executing on it. So, I say all the time in our place, like, baseball is, you can figure it out. It is a game that you can figure out. It comes with a lot of work, but in the space of tournaments, the Diamond Allegiance, and what's happening here, you're doing your part to figure it out, which is why it's awesome. I love that we're in it, and I'm sure everyone on the call feels the same way. And collectively, I hope we keep figuring out faster and better, because then it just provides a better path for the kids, a more enjoyable path, and ultimately a more successful path. And like everyone's saying, it doesn't require 10 hours on the field on a Saturday or a Sunday to become a quality player. And what it requires is you put your time in and you learn from the time, you recognize the things you did great. All of us that were successful, in this game, we looked at what we did well. We looked at what we didn't do as well. We just went and got after it, tried to close those gaps. So that's what we're doing in development, is just closing the gaps. And really with these tournaments, it's closing the gap really from what it should be to now what it's going to be. And so I'm excited. I can't wait. And it always brings a level of joy and fun for the younger kids too, to have some recognition, have a college coach there, even if they're not fully recruitable, just to learn something, hear a different voice. I recommend to our families, to anybody, that it's always good to hear somebody's perspective. I want our players getting different perspective. You have to learn how to filter information. We're in a world of overload on information. So if you can't hear information, filter, you're in trouble. Like, you can't just live under a rock. Like, you want to hear different hitting coaches. Doesn't mean you need to give up who you are, but we're back to, again, development. Who are you, right? And learning who you are. So these tournaments, I think, are going to give chances for players to get perspective on what great players look like across the country. It gives them a perspective without beating the heck out of their bodies, and gives them the experience. So all the way around, and the testing center to give them some validation of why they are where they are in some ways, help them understand. And so I'm really excited for it. I can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. All right, guys, we're going to move to, I'm already keeping you guys over the time I told you I would. So we're going to try to spend around 15 or 20 minutes on recruiting. And then we'll wrap it up. So Lenny, I'll start with you. you know, I'm going to steal this from Coach Bakich, who, you know, we all know is on the board of the Diamond Allegiance. And Coach Bakich said a couple weeks ago that we're in a pandemic of recruiting and we just don't realize the consequences yet, right? More changes happened in the last 12 months than in the previous 15 years, right? So I think we're all figuring it out and figuring it out on the fly. But with that backdrop, Lenny, I think the direct question I'd like to ask you is, you know, what impacts have you felt and have your kids felt with the new recruiting rules? And let's start specifically with the lowering of the roster size and, you know, essentially losing up to 10% of a roster. So let's start with you, Lenny.
Well, we've felt everything so far. We've had scholarships pulled from kids. We've had kids all of a sudden that thought they were going to be going somewhere that, or had a chance to, then all of a sudden those guys backed off of recruiting completely. And we're seeing the JUCOs, they're gonna have to take a different route to where they really wanted to get to outside the box. The whole game of the 14 to 16 kid high school class is gone. That's not coming back anytime soon. And, you know, it's just going to be very different. It's also going to be different for the schools too, because here you could load up on rosters and you got a 40-man, 45-man roster or whatever it's been the last couple of years. They keep some red shirts and all this stuff going on. And now they're going to have to go to 35-player roster and talk about going back to how all these things or all your pillars are tied together. Talk about development, making sure a kid can go play multiple positions on a 35-player roster, or a guy that's a two-way that can now grab a bat and go in and pinch hit and maybe have to go catch a fly ball late in the game somewhere. All that is going to come into play as this, and they better be able to do it at a high level with a mature body coming out of high school. So from the physical to the mental to the competing to everything, to being able to go do that. But our job, and sometimes people hate us for it, is you got to be brutally honest with a kid and a parent and tell them, guess you're not as good as you think you are. You're not where you need to be. You can't play there. This list, we had a kid was committed to Georgia, got decommitted, and then he gave us another list, and it had Notre Dame and UNC. And we said, look, all these schools are full right now. They're telling you have to go a different route. We need to go back to a drawing board, come up with a new list of schools that we can get you on a field, because you can't go to a Power 5 school, transfer, and go to another Power 5 school without having any video and stats. No one's taking you. Why? So you got to go get on a field somewhere. So your route to Georgia might be going through JUCO or mid-major to eventually get to your dream school. And it's about being honest with them and working through it. It's brutally hard right now. And it's going to be that way for the next 2 years. But the people that are willing to listen and dig in will be fine. And I feel really bad for the high school kid that's really got a chance that they're not going to be able to take a chance on out of high school anymore, because they're not going to. Nor would I blame Coach Bakich when you can go get a proven guy at a college body to step in, and you just lost your junior, you got drafted, and you need to replace him. You're not counting on an 18-year-old freshman that's first time away from home to go win when you got to play on the road in an ACC game. You're just not going to do it. Yeah. So it's going to be hard. It's about being honest though with the high school kids and just where they're at and trying to help them navigate these waters. So
great. Pat, same question to you. What have you guys seen kind of on the ground with your families and players? What's the effect that it's having on the kids coming through your program?
Yeah, unfortunately, the same things Lenny just mentioned, all of the decommits. I think, not only to this topic, but the topics I've been listening to for the last 20 minutes, we've been talking about this parent education piece that we're all struggling with. And I think this is probably the next biggest one for the kids that want to go play college. The parent education piece, if I jump back 20 minutes ago, everybody on this call loses kids because their kid wants to go to the other club to play on the top team, right? And is that good for them? But when it comes to recruiting, staying ahead of the game as a Diamond Allegiance, we need to be aware of it. Because on the flip side, I'm good friends with a small NAI coach here in Central Iowa, and his recruiting pitch right now is, hey, come here for 1 year and I'll get you somewhere. So this whole thing is flipping. So the D3s and the D2s and the NAIs and obviously the JUCOs have forever. Their pitch now is, I'm going to help you get to your goal. So as an organization, if we understand sort of where everybody's falling, and if we can get that parent education going, the top kids in all of our programs are going to go D1. We all know those. We all have those kids. If they don't get drafted, they're going to land somewhere nice. But it's all the rest. It's all that other kids that we're used to going D1. Even if they go to a small mid-major, now stuff's getting cold. So, I think this is a great topic for the Diamond Legions to really focus on over time. And what is the message we can give out as a group to kids on the recruiting pitch? I think it's going to carry a lot of weight. And that education piece to parents, because it's changing. I mean, Coach Bakich is 100% spot on. Who doesn't want a 23-year-old, really mature third baseman to come in as opposed to an 18-year-old high school kid? Everyone wants it, who's proved himself at a D2 level. The landscape has changed so much, and what we need to do as a group, in my opinion, is to get that education piece going.
Yeah, and I agree. And one thing that, might be new to some of you guys, and is, we're in the process of creating the portal, right, for high school recruiting. And, when you go to a Diamond Allegiance, Diamond Sports Foundation event, your video and your metrics are going to go into that portal, right? And being able to broaden your recruiting net, I think, is really important, right? If you really look at recruiting generally, it's generally done in a regional type of manner, and I think that'll stay the same to an extent, right? Like, everybody's going to want to come play junior college in Florida. Let's be honest, right? The competition to play junior college in Florida is going to go through the roof, right? So guys like the Pokers and Jim Osting and Power Baseball that are based in Florida, right? That phone call they used to make to, Marty Smith at CF, he might now be like, I can't take that guy anymore, right? So how are we going to open up our ability to recruit nationwide? And I think the nationwide recruiting is really going to start to come into play, because kids are, we're going to have this much more of a cross section. So I think that's one thing, obviously, that we're trying to do at the Diamond Allegiance, to kind of stay a step ahead and to provide more opportunity for the families and parents that are part of our member organizations.
Hey, Matt.
Yep.
Matt, just real quick, back to your competition thing. I know you didn't ask me the question about it, but being so far down in South Florida, we're trying to get our kids exposed outside of here, right? And to go play, it's not like we can go take a 4-hour drive and get out of Florida. So to get up to Carolina, it's 11, 12 hours. But to go up there to an event, like we went to Prospect Select, competition was awesome. The venues were awesome. No schools. But to come to a Diamond Allegiance thing, we've been to Music City. It's been great because you can go up there, you're going to have schools, but to know that you're going to have a certain set of schools there for these kids, the parents are spending the money while they're away. They're going to get seen. And the other part of that is working through, maybe that you're going to leave them in. You're not playing to win a tournament, right? Now you're going to let a kid go who might be struggling. Let's see if he can get out of the jam. That might be more beneficial to the schools that are there watching them. Then you have to go yank them out because you're trying to win this game to get to the next game, so you don't get the kid who just walked to guys. Let's see if he can get out of the jam now. And just stuff like that. We're looking forward to it. I mean, I don't know that any organizations love us because we don't have our bid to the Nationals for PG, because we don't play in enough PG events. We go to where our kids are getting seen. And, I'm excited about knowing we're going to go places that there's going to be schools for these kids to be seen, because it ties right into this whole recruiting piece that we've got going on. So.
Yeah, Lenny, I think you're so right. And nothing against those other groups. They do good things. But I think that one thing that's missing, and I've always felt it even back to my days of running a club, was I want to look a parent in the eye, and when they're going to spend that money to go and play in an event, I want to make sure that there's value for them, right? And I do think that that's one thing that I'm so super proud of this group and everybody that's part of the Diamond Allegiance that has identified that as a really important cog to what we're going to be doing going into this summer. Jim, same question for you. On the competition side, what excites you? And then on the recruitment side, what are you seeing, and, what's kind of your pivot been to help give your players and parents the best blueprint forward?
I think for all kids at this age, I think one of the biggest things that needs to happen is they need to be in a program. Unfortunately, most of the people that are going to be watching this webinar are already in programs like all of these guys are in charge of, that are, baseball guys, but reputable people, that when they reach out to a college coach, their voice is heard. I think most of us that are on this call, we're probably very honest with our guys and our players, but the players and the parents, you have to know, number one, in my opinion, the number one rule to recruiting is you have to know who you are. Again, that the testing piece comes in, and you kind of get, put in a certain, in a certain pile, so to speak. But I think if you know who you are and you're very honest with who you are, I think recruiting is an obtainable goal. When you're unrealistic about who you are, if you're throwing 84 as a rising senior and you're a right-handed guy and you don't have anything that's like outstanding, secondary stuff as a pitcher, like you're not a Division I, Power 4, Power 5 guy, which is that is okay. I think that if you're honest with yourself and you know who you are, I think that's the number one rule to recruiting. I take the approach of underselling and over delivering. And what I mean by that is, I think over time, the college coaches have learned that if Coach Osting is saying, hey, this guy can play at our level, and for us, it's probably a guy that we need to go take a look at. I think a lot of guys in our industry hype up players because it's their neck on the line that makes them look good if they go to a certain place. But how many of these guys actually end up showing up at a Power 4 school that they committed to, a year and a half before? How many of those guys leave after one semester because they weren't able to compete at that level? I think those are numbers that no one ever really looks at. I think they just look at that bottom line and go, oh, wow, look at that team. On a Perfect Game website, they've got 26 guys committed to Division I programs. Well, go back and look at that list after signing day and see if that list is still the same. Go back and look at that list after Christmas and see if that list is still the same. So I think a lot of misconceptions and understandings from parents, again, what they don't know is a big thing. We use education for us. I know for our program, we sit our parents down at least twice a year and really educate them on the process and what it looks like. And obviously, my talk to them in March or February was different in August and September, just because how much has changed over the last 6 months. So recruiting to me is know who you are, and then go be really good at who you are. And then on the second piece of that, all these Diamond Allegiance events that we're going to be doing, I think all of us would agree that, when you have a tournament that has 250 to 400 teams in it, college coaches, they're calling us and saying, hey, when's so-and-so throwing? And is this guy catching in this game or this game? They're making their schedules a week before the event happens. They're not going down to sit in the stands and just watch baseball games. They're going to specific games to watch certain players play, certain guys pitch, and they're bouncing around all over the place to see that. They're going down to see probably 40 or 50 games, on a really big week. They're not seeing 300 teams go play. And let's face it, a lot of those teams that they're coming to see are guys that are on this call and programs that are in the Diamond Allegiance, that when we start doing these events, that's why we're doing these events, because those coaches they're coming to see our programs, which is fun, and it's to be able to compete against guys and teams that have like-minded philosophies and thoughts about trying to help kids get to the next level, is probably the most exciting thing for me. But just knowing who you are in recruiting and kind of like pushing yourself in those areas.
Love it. Well, guys, I certainly appreciate your time. I know that I tried to get everybody at least 2 times on the mic. I know maybe next time we'll do it a little bit smaller, right? So we can get a little bit more input from everybody. But the information gleaned tonight, I want to reiterate something that Jim said for those that are joining live, but also those that will see this, through cuts and different things on social media. It's so important. I think the one thing that I would boil down everything to is it's so important for you to pick an organization, if you're a parent, that's going to do the things that we talked about tonight, right? And do your research and make sure that you're with an organization that's tried and true and has been through this, has the relationships, puts a premium on development, and cares about your kid as a person, and not just a number. And I think all of the organizations that I know, because I've been involved in the vetting and the interviewing process of everybody that's a part of the Diamond Allegiance, I know that the mindset of a Diamond Allegiance club fits that. So parents, players, surround yourself with guys and girls like this that are on this call. It's so important to your journey. And all of our member clubs and the Diamond Allegiance will continue to try to reimagine the travel ball landscape. I think that's one of our calling cards, and something that's on our website, and it's something that we'll continue to do. So guys, I really appreciate your time tonight. Happy Thanksgiving. And for everybody that joined, thank you very much. I hope everyone has a good night. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.